The first thing I noticed wasn't the clay spinning wildly beneath my palms, it was his voice, sharp and playful, cutting through the hum of the wheel. "Are you always this bad with your hands?" he asked. "Or are you saving your coordination for something else?" I should have walked out right there, maybe asked for a refund, but instead I froze. Heat burned my ears as laughter rippled through the other students. And when I finally dared to look up, I saw him, the instructor. The kind of man you don't forget even if you try. His name was Aaron. Tall, broad shoulders, sandy hair that never sat quite right, and those damn eyes, ocean blue with a mischievous spark. He leaned casually against the workbench, arms folded, watching me like he already knew every secret I didn't want anyone to touch. I wasn't supposed to be here. I had signed up for pottery because it seemed harmless, something to fill the gaps of lonely weekends. A hobby far removed from the chaos of my job, my family, my carefully built walls. What I hadn't signed up for was him. And yet, here he was, already tugging at the threads of my composure. The wheel sputtered under my clumsy grip, clay collapsing into an ugly heap. My classmates giggled again. Aaron pushed off the bench, stepping closer until he stood right behind me. His shadow swallowed mine. "Relax," he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. "You're fighting it too hard. Clay listens better when you stop trying to control it." I felt his hands warm, steady hover just above mine. He didn't touch me, not yet, but the possibility crackled in the air like static. My throat tightened. I hated how aware I was of every inch between us, how much I wanted it gone. "Try again," he said, his breath grazing my ear. I swallowed, pressed my palms more gently, and the clay slowly rose, shaping into something that almost resembled a vase. My pulse hammered louder than the wheel. I wanted to believe he was just doing his job, just helping a struggling student. But when I glanced sideways, his eyes weren't on the clay. They were on me. The class ended, but the heat in my chest didn't. Students packed up, chatting and laughing as they left, while I lingered by the sink, scrubbing clay from my hands like it might wash away the memory of his voice. "You survived," Aaron said, appearing beside me with that grin again. I nearly dropped the sponge. "Barely. You're a stubborn one," he teased. "Most people would have given up halfway through." "Maybe I should have," I muttered, though it came out weaker than I intended. "Don't," he said softly, surprising me. For a moment, the joking tone faded. His eyes locked onto mine, steady and unflinching. "You've got potential. You just need someone to push you a little." I wanted to ask if he meant the clay or me, but before I could, he reached past me to grab a towel, brushing close enough that I caught the faint scent of soap and coffee clinging to his shirt. My heart lurched. He smirked, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. "Same time next week?" I should have said no. I should have reminded myself that men like him, open, fearless, unapologetically magnetic, didn't belong in the same orbit as men like me, who still flinched at the word different, who still lied to family about late nights and made excuses about why no girlfriend ever stuck. But instead, all I managed was a nod. "Good," Aaron said, flashing that dangerous smile before walking away. "Don't keep me waiting." And just like that, I was already tangled. By the second class, I stopped pretending I wasn't looking for him the moment I walked in. Aaron noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything. The way I adjusted my glasses when I was nervous. The way I clenched my jaw when my clay collapsed again. The way my ears turned red whenever he leaned too close. And then came the question I wasn't ready for. "So," he said casually, as though he wasn't about to set my world spinning faster than the pottery wheel. "What's your dating schedule like these days?" The words hit me like a slap. My fingers stiffened around the damp clay, ruining the peace instantly. I turned to him, startled, searching for mockery in his expression. But there wasn't any. Just that infuriating grin, softened by something I couldn't name. "Excuse me," I croaked. "Your dating schedule," he repeated, tilting his head. "You know, Friday dinners, Saturday movies, the usual routine. Gotta make sure I don't keep you too long after class if someone's waiting on you." I stared at him, heart thundering. Was he teasing me? Fishing for information? Or worse, did he already know? I don't. My voice trailed off. The room felt too small, too loud with everyone else's laughter, too quiet where we stood. I don't really date. Aaron raised an eyebrow. By choice or by circumstance? The clay between my fingers slipped, collapsing again. I dropped my hands into my lap, hating how exposed I felt. Neither of your business, I muttered. Maybe not, he said, and for once there was no grin, just honesty. But I want it to be. I froze. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to shut him out, to laugh it off, to retreat behind the walls I'd spent years building. But something in his voice, steady, certain, a little reckless, cut through the fear. For the first time in a long time, I didn't want to run. Aaron's words lingered in the air long after class ended, gnawing at the edges of my carefully constructed silence. I want it to be. He hadn't said it like a joke. He hadn't said it like some casual, meaningless flirtation tossed into the air to see if it would stick. He'd said it like a declaration, quiet but unshakable, the kind that lodged itself under your ribs and refused to leave. And I hated that part of me wanted to believe him. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my hands still smelling faintly of clay no matter how many times I scrubbed them. Memories of his touch, not even a touch, just the ghost of one kept replaying in my head. The way his voice had dropped low enough that only I could hear. The way his eyes held mine like they weren't afraid of the truth I had buried for years. I told myself it was nothing. He was probably like this with everyone, charming and easy, the kind of man who had never once had to second-guess who he was or who he loved. Men like Aaron moved through the world untouched by shame. Men like me didn't. Still, when Saturday rolled around, I found myself walking into the studio early, my heart pounding like I was about to confess to a crime. He was already there. Of course he was. Aaron was bent over a workbench, sleeves rolled up, forearms dusted with clay, the veins on his hands pronounced as he shaped something with effortless control. He didn't notice me at first, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to just look. To memorize the curve of his shoulders, the way concentration softened his usual teasing grin into something almost vulnerable. Then he looked up, and I nearly stumbled backward. "You're early," he said, surprise flickering into a smile. "I didn't have anything better to do," I muttered, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets. He leaned back against the table, tilting his head. "That's not true." I frowned. "You don't know me." "Not yet," he said, and damn it, the way he said it made me want to let him. We worked side by side that day. He didn't tease as much as usual, maybe sensing how on edge I was, though every now and then his shoulder brushed mine, sending jolts through my body like sparks skittering across dry ground. When my bowl collapsed for the 5th time, I groaned and pushed back from the wheel. "I'm hopeless." "You're not," Aaron said firmly. He reached across, taking the clay into his hands, reshaping it in seconds. Then, without asking, he placed his hands over mine. This time he didn't hover. His palms pressed against the backs of my hands, guiding them, steadying them. I froze. His skin was warm, rough in places where clay had dried and cracked, but steady. My chest tightened as the wheel spun, the clay rising smoothly under our joined touch. "See," he murmured. "You just needed someone to steady you." Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was feel his hands, his voice, the weight of something dangerous pressing closer than I'd ever let anyone before. When the vase finally took shape, I pulled my hands back like I'd been burned. My pulse was racing, shame tangling with something sharper, something I didn't want to name. Aaron studied me quietly. Then he leaned in, close enough that I caught the faint rasp of his stubble as he whispered, "Tell me I'm wrong." Couldn't. God help me, I couldn't. Instead, I grabbed my bag and muttered something about being late before bolting out the door. But running only worked for so long. By the 4th week, it wasn't just the clay that was reshaping might, was him. He never pushed too hard. Sometimes he teased, sometimes he guided. Sometimes he simply sat across from me while I worked, silent but steady, like his presence alone was enough to hold me together. And slowly, against my will, I started to let pieces slip. Like the time I admitted I hated my office job. Or the time I told him I hadn't been home in months because my family's questions cut sharper than knives. Or the night I stayed after class, the studio empty except for the two of us, and confessed that I didn't remember the last time I'd let myself want something without guilt strangling it. He listened. Always. And when I finally lifted my eyes from the clay, afraid of what I might see in his, Aaron just nodded, his gaze steady. "You deserve better than guilt," he said simply. I laughed bitterly. Easier said than done. "Then let me help," he replied, like it wasn't even a question. The silence that followed was so thick I thought it might suffocate me. But it wasn't suffocating. It was freeing. Terrifyingly so. Because for the first time I thought maybe he meant it. The turning point came one night when the rain poured so hard it drowned the city. The studio lights glowed warm against the storm. The world outside blurred by sheets of water. Most of the students had canceled, leaving just me and Aaron, the hum of the wheel and the rain filling the quiet. When the power flickered, I jumped. Aaron chuckled softly. "Relax. Worst case, we'll just sculpt in the dark." "That sounds dangerous." "That sounds exciting," he corrected, flashing that grin. But then the lights dimmed for real, plunging the room into shadow, only the storm outside illuminating his face. He looked different then, softer, less like the untouchable instructor and more like the man who had been slipping under my defenses week by week. I should have said something safe. I should have joked back, or grabbed my things and left. But instead, I heard myself whisper, "You scare me." He blinked, surprised. "Me? Yes," I admitted, my voice shaking. "Because you see me, and I don't know what to do with that." For a moment, silence stretched between us, broken only by thunder. Then Aaron stepped forward, closing the gap between us with deliberate slowness. His hand reached up, hesitated, then brushed against my jaw. My breath hitched. "You don't have to do anything," he said softly. "Just let me be here." The storm raged outside. Inside, my walls cracked. And when he kissed me, tentative at first, then certain as my resistance melted, I didn't run. For once in my life, I let myself stay. The next morning, reality came crashing back with brutal clarity. What had felt safe inside the storm felt dangerous in the daylight. My phone buzzed with texts from my mother. "When are you coming to visit? Have you met anyone? Don't waste your best years." Each word clawed at the fragile peace I'd built the night before. At work, a coworker joked about that gay couple down the street, his tone sharp and mocking. Laughter followed. I laughed too, hollow and forced, but inside I was crumbling. What would they say if they knew? What would they do? By the time pottery class rolled around again, my chest felt like it was splintering. Aaron noticed immediately. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied, gripping the clay so hard it tore beneath my hands. He didn't push, not then. But when class ended and everyone left, he caught my wrist gently. "Don't shut me out," he said, his voice low but steady. "Not after last night." "I can't," my voice cracked, panic swelling. "You don't get it. You don't know what it's like." His eyes hardened, but not with anger, with something fiercer. "Then tell me. Let me understand." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But fear pressed down like a weight I'd carried too long to let go of. So I pulled away. And for the first time, I saw hurt flicker in his eyes. The week after I pulled away from Aaron, the studio felt colder. He still greeted everyone the same, still made jokes that had the other students laughing. But when his eyes met mine, there was something missing. The spark. The way he used to look at me like I was the only person in the room. Now, he kept his distance, as though respecting a boundary I hadn't wanted to draw but couldn't stop myself from raising. And I hated it. Every time he passed me without brushing close, every time he offered feedback to someone else with that warm smile but kept his tone clipped with me, a part of me cracked. Yet I said nothing. I buried myself in clay, hands trembling, shapes collapsing, frustration mounting until one night I slammed my fist into the spinning wheel, splattering mud across my apron. "Careful," Aaron said sharply, appearing at my side. His hand hovered near mine but didn't touch. He waited, patient, his jaw tight. I can't do this, I muttered. He exhaled. The vase? Or? Any of it. My voice broke. This. Whatever the hell this is. The room was silent except for the hum of the wheel. Students packed up in the background, but I barely noticed. My chest was burning, words spilling before I could stop them. You don't understand. People like me, people who grew up where I did, with family like Minu don't get to have this. Not without losing everything. Finally, his hand landed on my shoulder. Firm, grounding. You think I don't know what it's like? His voice was steady, but his eyes were stormy. You think I've never had to fight for it? For myself. I froze. He rarely talked about himself. I realized I didn't know much about his life outside the studio. He always turned the conversation back to me, never letting me see the cracks in his own armor. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. I lost people, friends, even family, because I refused to hide. My heart stuttered. But I'm still here, Aaron said, and I'd rather stand alone in truth than be smothered by lies with company. His words hit like a punch, because wasn't that exactly what I'd been doing? Smothering, pretending, smiling when coworkers made cruel jokes, dodging my mother's questions, nodding along while everyone else decided what my life should look like. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. It's not that simple. No, Aaron agreed. It's not. But neither is this, he gestured between us. And you can't tell me you don't feel it. I looked down at the mess of clay between my fingers. My silence was an answer in itself. Aaron sighed, pulling his hand back. I'll give you space, but don't expect me to stop caring. And then he walked away, leaving me with nothing but the hollow ache of my own cowardice. That night, I drove aimlessly, rain streaking across the windshield, until I found myself parked outside my parents' house. Lights glowed in the windows. Shadows of movement flickered inside of me, mother bustling in the kitchen, my father in his recliner. The familiar picture of family life I'd been raised to protect, uphold, continue. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, my chest tight. The thought of walking in, of sitting at that table and lying through my teeth about work, about love, about why I always seemed restless, made me sick. But so did the thought of telling them the truth. My phone buzzed. A message from Aaron, drive safe. Storm's bad tonight. That was it. No push, no lecture. Just care. And in that moment, I realized how much I wanted more than texts, more than stolen moments in the studio. I wanted him, but wanting and having weren't the same. Days bled into weeks. I avoided his gaze, but my heart didn't cooperate. Every glance at his hands made me remember the way they'd steadied mine. Every laugh he gave another student made me jealous, stupidly, selfishly jealous. And every time his eyes softened when they caught mine across the room, I felt like I was drowning in something too big to fight. The breaking point came when my coworker, Derek, stopped by the studio one evening. He'd heard me mention pottery at the office and joked about tagging along. I didn't think he'd actually do it. But there he was, loud and arrogant, making crude jokes about getting his hands dirty in more ways than one. Aaron kept his composure, guiding Derek with professional patience. But I saw the flicker of irritation in his jaw. I saw the way his eyes darted to me, searching. And I saw Derek's grin widen when he caught it. So this is why you sneak off after work, Derek said loudly, clapping me on the back. Gotta admit, man, your taste in teachers is interesting. He smirked at Aaron. Not that I blame you. Heat shot through my body. My chest locked up. The room tilted. Aaron stepped forward, his tone even but sharp. He's here to learn, same as everyone else. Keep it respectful. But Derek only laughed, throwing me a knowing look. Relax, I'm just kidding. Unless, shut up, I snapped, louder than I meant to. The studio went quiet. All eyes turned to me. Derek's smirk faltered. Dude, I was just, leave, I said, my voice shaking. He blinked, then raised his hands in mock surrender. Fine, whatever. He grabbed his bag and sauntered out, muttering under his breath. Silence hung heavy in his absence. My classmates whispered to each other, and I felt the weight of their stares pressing down like stones. Then Aaron's voice cut through, steady and sure. Class dismissed. One by one, they left until it was just the two of us. I stood frozen at the wheel, shame burning through me. He's going to tell everyone, I whispered. Let him, Aaron said. You don't get it? I snapped, whirling on him. This isn't just about me. This is my job, my family, my entire life. One word, one rumor, and it's all gone. Aaron's eyes were fierce, unflinching. Then what kind of life is it, if one word can destroy it? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Look, he said, stepping closer. His voice softened. I'm not saying it's easy, but hiding isn't living. It's surviving, and you deserve more than survival. Tears blurred my vision. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Aaron's hand brushed my tentative, waiting. Then let me be strong for both of us. At least for now. For the first time, I didn't pull away. The fallout came fast. Monday morning, whispers curled through the office. Derek's smirk followed me down the hall. By lunch, I overheard my name tangled with words like fag and queer, spat like poison. My chest clenched, nausea clawing at my throat. That evening, my mother called. I heard something today. She began carefully, her voice tight. Something about you. Tell me it's not true. Couldn't. My silence was answer enough. Her sigh was sharp, brittle. Do you know what this will do to your father? To our family? I hung up before the sobs broke free. I drove to the studio without thinking. Clay still under my nails from the night before, heart in pieces. Aaron was there, cleaning tools, humming softly. He looked up when I entered, and in an instant, his expression shifted concern, recognition, the unspoken understanding that something had shattered. I broke then. Words tumbled out about Derek, about the office, about my mother's voice like a blade, about the fear clawing at me, the shame that wouldn't die, the ache of wanting something I wasn't sure I deserved. Aaron didn't interrupt. He just listened, stepping forward when my knees buckled, catching me against his chest. Let it out, he murmured, holding me as sobs ripped through me. I've got you. And for the first time, I believed him. The weeks that followed were brutal. Some coworkers avoided me. Others snickered. My father stopped answering my calls. My mother's messages were clipped, distant. But through it all, Aaron was there. He didn't push me to be brave every second. Some nights he just sat with me in silence, our hands tangled together on the couch. Other nights he cracked jokes until I laughed through tears. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to feel something I hadn't in years. Hope. One evening, as we worked side by side at the wheel, clay spinning steady beneath our hands, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of the clay anymore. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to be afraid of love either. The gallery lights were brighter than I'd expected. Too bright. They poured down over every sculpture, every vase, every crooked bowl that students had made, mine included. The studio had decided to host a community showcase, a chance for us to display what months of spinning wheels and messy hands had created. I almost didn't come. After everything, the rumors at work, the silence from my father, the pitying looks from people who used to smile, I wanted to disappear. But Aaron had looked at me the night before, his hand steady on mine, and said simply, "Don't hide. Not from this." So here I was, standing in front of a lopsided vase that bore my name on a little white card, pretending I belonged while my heart pounded against my ribs. People milled around, glasses of wine in hand, murmuring about technique and color. My coworkers hadn't shown up, thank God. But my mother had. I spotted her near the entrance, clutching her purse like a shield, eyes sharp as they scanned the room. She hadn't spoken to me in weeks. Now her gaze landed on me and then on Aaron. He was across the room, laughing with a group of students, his smile easy, his presence impossible to ignore. And then, as if pulled by instinct, his eyes found mine. He started toward me. Panic surged. I wanted to run, to shrink, to pretend. But I didn't move. Not this time. Aaron stopped at my side, close enough that the heat of his arm bled into mine. He didn't touch me, not yet, but his presence was a choice, bold and unmistakable. My mother's lips pressed into a line. She walked over, her heels sharp against the floor. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice tight. I nodded, throat dry. Aaron stepped back a little, giving space, but his eyes never left me. We moved to a quiet corner. My mother's face was pale, her hands trembling as she gripped her purse. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Why are you throwing everything away?" "I'm not," I said, though my voice shook. "I'm finally not lying." Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't soft. They were heavy, wounded. "You could have had a good life. A wife, children, respect." And instead she broke off, glancing toward Aaron with something between anger and fear. "This is my good life," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my words. "Even if you can't see it." Silence stretched. Her chest rose and fell, and for a moment I thought she'd walk out. Maybe she would. Maybe that was inevitable. But when I turned back toward Aaron, I realized something. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. The night wore on. People drifted between tables, praising work, sipping wine. My mother left without saying goodbye. My chest ached, but it wasn't hollow anymore. It was full with pain, yes, but also with something harder, sharper, alive. When the showcase ended, I found Aaron by the kiln, packing up tools. He looked up as I approached, his smile tentative. "You stayed," he said. "I almost didn't." I paused. Then, quietly, "Thank you for being here. Always," he replied, like it was the simplest truth in the world. And then, for the first time in public, I reached for his hand. The weight lifted, not all at once, but enough to breathe. Life didn't magically fix itself after that night. My father still didn't answer my calls. At work, the whispers didn't disappear overnight. But slowly, things shifted. A few co-workers defended me. One left an anonymous note on my desk. "Ignore them. You're braver than they'll ever be." At home, my mother's silence stretched for months. But eventually, she called. Tentative. Small. She didn't apologize, not fully, but she asked how I was. Asked if Aaron was treating me well. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And through it all, Aaron never wavered. He was there in the quiet nights, in the stormy mornings, in the laughter that bubbled back into my life piece by piece. We built routines. Clay on Saturdays, coffee on Sundays, dinners that turned into midnight talks, kisses that turned into mornings spent tangled in sheets. The studio stopped feeling like a class, started feeling like home. One evening, months later, I sat at the wheel, shaping a bowl with hands steadier than they'd ever been. Aaron stood behind me, arms folded, watching. "You've come a long way," he said softly. I glanced back at him, smiling faintly. "Because you didn't give up on me." He stepped closer, resting his hands lightly on my shoulders. "Because you didn't give up on yourself." The clay rose under my palms, smooth and steady. And for the first time, I realized he was right. I hadn't just learned pottery here. I'd learned to stop collapsing, to shape something out of the mess. When the bowl was finished, Aaron leaned down, pressing a kiss against the top of my head. And in that simple, quiet moment, I knew this was it. The life I'd been too afraid to claim. The love I'd been too afraid to want. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. And it was enough. Months turned into seasons. Seasons into years. The studio grew. The community stronger. My place in it undeniable. My father never came around. My mother softened, little by little, until one day she hugged Aaron without flinching. At work, the whispers faded, replaced by respect for the work I did, the quiet resilience I carried. Some never changed, but I had. And late at night, when I lay beside Aaron, his arm draped over me, his breath steady against my neck, I knew I'd made the right choice. I'd only signed up for a pottery class, but what I found was a life I never thought I could have, and a love I'd never let go. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.